When I hung the American flag in front of my house, I only thought I was expressing my patriotism, but it quickly turned into a tense confrontation with the Homeowners Association, HO. Could I hold on to my beliefs and defend my freedom against this unreasonable control? I, Daniel, have always seen the American flag as a sacred symbol of patriotism and national pride. Growing up in a military family, I understood from a young age that freedom is not something given to us. It is the result of sacrifices and relentless effort. My father, a soldier who fought in several wars, always taught me the invaluable lessons of freedom. Every time I saw the American flag waving in the wind, a sense of pride would swell in me. Do you understand, Daniel? My father once said on a dreary afternoon as we sat watching the flag flutter on the base. We fight not for this country in some vague way. We fight for freedom, for what this flag represents. It is not just a piece of cloth, but everything we believe in and protect. His words have etched themselves into my heart, forming the unshakable belief that freedom is the most precious thing we have, and it must be protected at all costs. As I grew older and joined the military, I understood more than ever the value of what I was protecting. Throughout my years of service, I participated in many campaigns, witnessing countless sacrifices from my comrades and loved ones. Every time I returned from the battlefield, I felt more mature, understanding the true meaning of freedom. And the American flag, whether small or large, remained an irreplaceable symbol in my heart. It was not just a symbol. It was the soul of this country, everything we soldiers fought to protect. After leaving the military, I decided to move to a quiet suburban neighborhood in America where everyone strives to maintain a neat, orderly life. The clean streets, meticulously cared for homes, and peaceful atmosphere made me feel like I was living in a perfect picture. In the mornings, as the sun rose, I could hear the birds singing in the distance, and people were either going to work or strolling in the park. It was hard to find a place like this. However, the tranquility came with strict regulations from the HOA. Every action, from how you trim your trees to how you decorate your yard, had to comply with rules that no one could violate. Sometimes, I felt uncomfortable with how everything had to be so closely monitored, but since this was where I had chosen to live, I had no choice but to accept it. These rules had become an inseparable part of life for the residents here, and there was nothing I could do but follow them. However, as a former soldier, I couldn't ignore the fact that the freedom I enjoy today didn't come easily. It was the result of sacrifices and wars fought by people like me. The American flag, to me, was not just a piece of cloth, but a symbol of everything I had given, of loyalty and pride that could not be separated. When I saw the flag waving in the sky, I not only thought of myself, but also of everyone who had sacrificed to protect this country. So, when I decided to hang a small American flag in front of my house, it was not a simple act. I knew it was a statement of my beliefs and patriotism, an essential part of my life. One day, I stood in front of my house, looking at the flag fluttering in the wind. I told myself, this flag represents not only me, but also everyone who fought to protect freedom. No one can take this right from me. I wanted to send a strong message through that flag. It wasn't just about displaying a symbol, but a reminder that freedom and patriotism were values I would never give up. And if anyone tried to stop me from expressing that, I would stand up to defend my rights, because freedom is something no one has the right to take away. Then, not long after I hung the flag, Karen, the head of the HOA, sent me a stern warning letter. Every morning, I would go outside to check the flag and tend to the small garden in front of my house. But that day, when I saw the letter in the mailbox, I felt something unusual. I opened the letter, and as soon as I saw the first line, I was taken aback. Mr. Daniel, the American flag hanging in front of your house violates the neighborhood regulations. Please remove it immediately. I opened the letter, my heart filled with anger. The words felt like blows to my chest. It wasn't just about the flag. It wasn't just about the neighborhood. It was about everything I had given. As I finished reading, a thought flashed in my mind. If I keep giving in like this, where will it end? Am I supposed to stay silent when my freedom is threatened? I clenched the letter and looked out the window where the flag was still waving. That was when I realized that this fight was not just mine. My pride, the pride of a soldier, seemed to be threatened right before my eyes. I couldn't understand this. How could anyone want to erase a symbol of freedom and resilience just because it didn't fit the neighborhood's rules? My heart was full of anger, but I also felt confused. I called Matt, a comrade who had fought with me on the battlefield. Matt, I'm at a crossroads, and I don't know what to do anymore. The HOA told me to take down the flag. They say it violates the rules. This isn't just a flag anymore. It's my pride of everything I fought for, I said, my voice choking. Matt was silent for a moment, then said, Daniel, listen, you fought on the battlefield, you've seen terrible things. But now you have to fight again, not against an enemy, but against yourself, to hold on to those values. Don't let them take away your freedom. How do you feel? My friend asked in a low voice. I feel like I'm being pushed into a corner, like they're stripping me of my own freedom. I hung that flag not to cause trouble, but to express my patriotism. Now they want me to take it down because it violates the neighborhood rules. You know, Daniel, my friend continued, when we fight for freedom, sometimes we have to stand up even when everything seems to be against us. Don't let them put out the fire inside you. His words gave me strength. I felt like I had found the answer for myself. This wasn't just a fight to protect the flag. This was a fight to protect the values I had spent my whole life defending. And I would not let any unreasonable rule make me give that up. I felt angry and disappointed, but there was also a hint of surprise. The first feeling was one of helplessness. How could this be? How could I not be free to express my patriotism in my own home in this country? But after a few minutes of silence, as I took a deep breath, I felt calm return. I told myself, no, this is the moment I need to stand up. I cannot let anyone take away my freedom, even something as simple as hanging a flag in front of my house. I turned to look at the flag fluttering in the wind, feeling the pride and strength it brought. It wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was a symbol of everything I had and would always protect. And I decided that no matter what happened, I would not let anyone diminish its value. But I didn't stop there. After carefully thinking about everything that had happened, I decided not only to keep the flag, but to turn my house into a powerful statement. I painted the entire front of the house with the colors of the American flag, red, white, and blue, as a way to express not only my patriotism, but also the personal freedom I had fought to protect. My house was no longer just a house. It had become a giant flag, an undeniable symbol of national pride and freedom of speech. When I stood in front of the house, looking at it covered in the colors of the American flag, I couldn't help but feel proud. I told myself, this is my home, and I have the right to express my patriotism. No one can take that away from me. I wanted Karen and the entire HOA to understand that freedom of speech was not something that could be controlled by unreasonable rules, things that were mere baseless control without real value. The flag was not just a piece of fabric. It was a declaration of personal freedom, the right to live in a country I had always respected and fought to protect. Although there was a slight feeling of worry in my heart, I was determined not to back down. I knew this was a decisive moment, not just for myself, but for everything I had kept and fought for my whole life. And I understood that if I gave in, I would not only lose myself, but also lose the values I had defended for so many years. Of course, Karen couldn't accept this. Just a few days later, I received urgent notices from the HOA. She had called emergency meetings and rallied the remaining neighbors to sign a petition demanding I remove the unacceptable action I had taken. Threatening letters were continuously sent to my house, demanding I take down the eye-catching mural I had created, accompanied by threats of legal action for violating the HOA's strict rules. The situation became more tense than ever. One morning, as I sat drinking my coffee, the official lawsuit letter from the HOA arrived. "Mr. Daniel," the letter began, "your actions, which have negatively impacted the aesthetics of the neighborhood and violated the HOA's rules for home decoration, have caused significant discontent in the community. We demand that you immediately remove the mural you have created." I read the letter, feeling furious, but deep down, I knew I had done the right thing. The situation was no longer just tense between Karen and me. It seemed the entire neighborhood was divided into two opposing opinions. Some neighbors, those who understood the strong message I was trying to convey about freedom and national pride, supported my actions. Among them was Mr. George, who lived next to me, and he came over and said, "Daniel, I get it. You're doing the right thing. I know you're not just hanging a flag. You're protecting what we, those who have fought for this country, have always believed in." A sense of pride swelled in me as I heard him say that. But not everyone felt the same. Many others remained loyal to the HOA and didn't want to be disturbed by any major changes in their community. Mrs. Linda, who lived at the end of the street, bluntly said to me one day when we met at her window, "Daniel, I don't understand what you're thinking. You can't just do whatever you want because you think it's right. The HOA has its reasons. Don't make this neighborhood chaotic." I could see the worry in her eyes, but I also understood that she was afraid of changes she couldn't control. Her words only made me more resolute, but at the same time, I understood that this division had created a heavy atmosphere in the neighborhood. It felt like a rising tide, with no one willing to fully express what they were feeling, but everyone sensing the tension in the air. A few days later, Karen and the HOA decided to take me to court. The lawsuit was filed, accusing me of ruining the neighborhood's appearance and violating home decoration rules. The whole neighborhood seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen. But for me, I realized this decision was no longer just a personal matter. It had become a battle between personal freedom and the rules I deemed unreasonable, and I was ready to fight until the end. One afternoon, I sat in the living room, looking at the flag fluttering in the wind, contemplating the upcoming battle. I called my lawyer, Mr. James, whom I had reached out to after deciding that I would not let the HOA defeat my freedom. "Mr. James, I can't back down. I want to defend my freedom. No one can stop me from expressing my patriotism, even in the private space of my own home," I said, my voice filled with determination. James, with a calm and steady voice, replied, "Daniel, we will fight based on the most fundamental principles of the Constitution. This is not a violation. It's a basic human right. We will prove that." Hearing those words, I felt like I had found a true ally in this fight. And so, a strong legal strategy was outlined, not only to protect my rights, but also to remind everyone of the importance of freedom of speech in a society where rules can sometimes be imposed unfairly. On the day of the trial, I stood before the court, my mind calm but full of resolve. Everything around me seemed to fade as I thought about everything that had brought me here. My lawyer, James, began speaking. "Your Honor, my client's actions were not a violation of the rules. They were an exercise of freedom of speech, a right that every one of us is entitled to protect. Mr. Daniel's house is not an eyesore. It is a part of his personal identity, a symbol of love and pride for his country." His voice rang out powerfully in the courtroom. I looked at the people present in the room. Some of them supported me, including a few neighbors who had come to witness this battle. But on the other side, across from me, were Karen and the HOA team. Their faces were full of discomfort and unease, but they couldn't deny the solid arguments we had presented. I could feel that every word James spoke hit the right spot. It wasn't just me. We were all fighting for a greater principle, freedom. The final judgment day arrived. When the court declared the HOA's lawsuit dismissed, I felt a surge of emotion. Not only had we won, but the court also ordered the HOA to pay for my legal fees. And what was even more surprising was that the court ordered action against Karen for abusing her power and negatively influencing the community. When the court declared victory, I could feel the power of freedom in every heartbeat. I stood up, not just for myself, but for all those who had fought to preserve these values. Thank you, James. We've regained what's most precious. And when I looked at the American flag on my house, I saw not just a symbol. I saw a declaration of freedom, of everything I had fought for. Thank you. This victory is not just mine, but for everyone who believes in freedom and justice, I said, my voice choking. But even though victory had arrived, I knew the fight wasn't over. A battle for freedom, for the right to express one's opinions, for what each of us has the right to protect. And I would always stand firm, not just for myself, but for everyone who believes that freedom is something that can never be taken away. When I returned home, the house, now like a giant flag, still stood strong against the wind, the symbol of freedom and pride that I had protected. I proudly looked at it. This was not just my personal victory, but the victory of all those fighting for freedom and standing against unreasonable pressure. I had stood up, and I had protected myself. The lawsuit didn't just end with the court's ruling. It also changed the community. After the incident, many people began to realize that HOA regulations couldn't be so unreasonable as to suppress personal freedom. Some neighbors spoke out, calling for changes, opening up a dialogue about regulations that needed to be reconsidered. The feeling of freedom, despite the many difficulties and challenges, had helped me assert my rights in a society where rigidity and imposition could sometimes cause invisible harm. The next day, as I stood in front of my house, Karen walked by, her eyes filled with bitterness. She didn't say anything, but I knew that look contained defeat, an acknowledgement of the oppressive power she had once represented. I didn't need words. That look alone was enough for me to understand that in this battle, I had won. For me, this victory was not just a personal win, but a confirmation of the right to freedom, a right I had and would never give up, no matter the challenges. When I stood in front of my house, now a symbol of freedom, not just for myself, but for the community, I clearly felt that this was a victory for the noble values I had always believed in. When I shared this with a neighbor, Mr. John, who had always kept a neutral stance on everything, I said, "John, I didn't do this just for myself. I did it for all of us because we can't let anyone's unreasonable control take away our personal freedom. Don't let anyone think freedom can be taken away so easily." Mr. John looked at me with admiration. "Daniel, I have to admit, I didn't understand the meaning of your actions until now. You've taught us a lesson in courage and resilience." And it was in that moment that I realized my victory wasn't just about protecting personal rights, but also about passing on a valuable lesson to everyone around me. This lesson wasn't just for me, but for everyone facing unreasonable rules, societal pressures, and inflexibility. When we stand up for the ideals and beliefs we pursue, we don't just protect ourselves, we can also bring about positive change for the community. The next day, as I stood in front of my house, the sunlight shining on the colors of the American flag, I felt the strength of every color. The sense of victory didn't only come from the outcome of the lawsuit, but also from the fact that I hadn't let fear or external pressure overshadow my beliefs and ideals. I smiled, looked at the house, and whispered the words I had written under the sign. "Freedom isn't free, and I will never back down." As I looked around at my neighbors, I saw that some had begun to reassess the HOA's regulations, no longer with the cautious attitude they had before. Some came up to me, patted me on the back, and said, "Thank you, Daniel. Because of you, we understand that freedom isn't something that can be taken away so easily." These words made me feel like I had done something meaningful, not only for myself, but for everyone who needed the strength to stand up and protect their values. The lesson I learned from this battle is, never let anyone take away your freedom and autonomy in life. We can't let unreasonable rules or societal pressures diminish our self-worth. Be brave and stand up for what you believe in, no matter the consequences. What I did wasn't just for me. It was for all those in modern society who still face rigid regulations and challenges they sometimes don't dare confront. And I, with a victorious smile and pride in my heart, proved that when we stand up to protect the values we believe in, nothing can stop us. Freedom isn't something that can be bought. It must be earned and protected with everything we have. And I will continue to protect it, not just for myself, but for everyone who believes in true freedom. This battle wasn't just about the flag or personal freedom, but about protecting the values we always believe in, no matter how many challenges we face. Freedom is not something that can be easily taken away, and when we stand up for what's right, we don't just protect ourselves, we create positive change for the community. When you stand firm with your ideals and beliefs, nothing can stop you. What do you think about protecting personal freedom in modern society? Would you stand up when your rights are threatened, or choose to remain silent and accept it? If you feel inspired by this story and its value, don't forget to hit subscribe on the Crazy Neighbor Drama channel to not miss the next videos with powerful and motivating stories. Share this story with your friends to inspire them to protect their personal freedom in life.